back for another episode, Matt.
We are. We're back.
I think today we're going to have a little bit of a chit chat about customer lifetime value. And, what I really want to talk to you about is, on my side here over Potomac, we're going to do an episode pretty soon on lifetime value with regard to how we look at it from a business valuation perspective. But I know that this is a huge thing when it comes to marketing, right? You got to really be dialed into customer lifetime value. So I want to talk about it from a marketing perspective today. You clearly have your marketing cap on.
It's on.
Let's talk about it.
In my experience, right, we help businesses that are getting started. We help businesses that we call that are in middle school. And then we're also helping businesses that are graduating high school or have graduated high school, right? So we've got a nice spectrum of businesses that we work with now at Lizard since we got started. The biggest identifier and that we can see, that I can see, because I grew up in a house of entrepreneurs who grew up in a house of entrepreneurs, right? So
who grew up actually in a trailer of entrepreneurs.
It's a trailer full of entrepreneurs. Memo, I know when you come down to Charlotte in November, I'm going to take you by where Mama Judy's salon was. It isn't like the bougie. I know you've been to South Park. It's in bougie South Park, Charlotte, which is where she set up shop before she retired. Like, she made it, right? She made it. And then Dad made it. And so hopefully I'm going to make it. I can make them both proud, right? But the thing that I see in the spectrum of businesses that we work with is when the business owner understands customer lifetime value, they are no longer in like the sandbox of business ownership. All right. They are willing to make riskier and bolder decisions to acquire more customers. Right. And they are not as thoughtful or concerned about the investment that it's going to take to get them there, right? And so that is a delineation I see between those stages: elementary school, middle school, high school, and beyond, of the businesses that we work with, right? The smaller businesses really struggle to understand customer lifetime value, and it shows because we call them, I guess I'm spilling all the Lizard tea now. We call them the soft handshakes at Lizard, right? If we've got a business leader who's making a soft handshake about getting involved in digital marketing, we can tell they don't understand customer lifetime value, and how every new customer that we bring on with their help, right, is going to beget somewhere between 3 to 7 years of additional revenue for their business that they don't have to worry about outside of salaries and wages, gas, and whatever else is required to get out to that person's home. So it's a big deal. And it is a mindset for the business owner. They need to understand customer lifetime value so that they can begin to hit that gas pedal and project their business forward into growth. This is the formula for customer lifetime value. Dylan, you can pop this up. Customer lifetime value is the average value of sales, right, times the number of transactions times a customer retention period, right? That's the formula. Average value of sale times number of transactions times customer retention period. And I made an example for pest control specifically. If the pest contract, the annual contract, is $550 and a customer stays on for 3 years, the customer lifetime value would be $550 times one transaction per year. Or you can do, people are doing quarterly and monthly payments, whatever, right? Same formula, times 3 years. That's $1,650 value, right? But the average retention, that's for 3 years. The average retention for pest control for a company that is just decent at what it's doing, is somewhere between 5 to 7 years. If it were 7 years, that's adding $3,850 onto your gross revenue year over year. That's money that you don't have to worry about going to get again. You're going to get new money in the future, right? So that's the formula of how customer lifetime value works.
And what you're saying, when a potential client or any operator doesn't really understand customer lifetime value, they're looking at it saying, well, wait a second, I'm paying $200 to get a pest control customer that's going to pay me $250 for a B job. They're not necessarily thinking about the value of that customer over the duration,
over the course of time.
That customer.
100%. All mature business owners know this, right? They've got things like net promoter score that they're measuring. They're working on incentives to increase their retention, right? And they're not scared to make the investments to get there. Yeah, I think when the business owner is starting to graduate out of that elementary school phase, they're not worried about spending, let's just, I mean, I won't spill other businesses' tea, but we have a lot of companies that come to us that are coming from other companies, right? Because our ecosystem, in particular in pest control, is uniquely kind of closed, right? And so we have companies that will come to us with conversion costs and digital marketing. That means a phone call that lasts longer than 30 seconds or a form that gets filled out that's submitted for business, right? A conversion cost of north of $130 sometimes, right? For one of those leads. And we have done, this isn't for everybody, but right now our range is in between $45. I think one of our markets is even $25, as high as $77 and some change is what I saw on last week's report, right? In season, right? We're even shaving off incrementally these dollar amounts for these conversion costs for clients that are coming to Lizard to work with us over these other businesses, because they see, why would I pay $130 over here versus, $70 over here, right? Yes, that's money saving. But if you're thinking about it like Mike Rogers, fuck, I'll spend $130 if I know it's going to get me $3,850, right? That's the mindset shift, right? I'll spend what it takes to get that recurring revenue, because that's what's going to grow my top line of my revenue, which is exactly what businesses like yours, like Potomac, care about. How many clients do you have, right? What is the value of those clients? And then we start to think about the margins inside of your business, right? And how to improve that.
This way, you have multiple levers in here, right? Meaning you're thinking about like customer acquisition costs. So how much do I have to pay up front?
Yep.
But you're also thinking about like, okay, so the CLV, right? The customer lifetime value will increase based upon the duration of that customer. So however long, like if you retain a customer for 3 years versus 5 years versus 7 years, right? Your customer lifetime value obviously increases the longer you hold that customer. So now you're kind of focused on, what do I need to do in order to, number one, select the right clients, and number two, provide the appropriate service to retain that client. And then on top of that, when you also think about customer lifetime value, you've got pricing. Like, so your pricing obviously is a lever, right? The more you charge per annum and you're able to retain the customer, the greater the lifetime value. So I think it's important for people out there to think about this not only in like customer acquisition cost terms, but also
after
duration. Duration of the customer, as well as pricing. Every month I do an Ask Me Anything. And, I didn't do it last month because I've been in Asia and Europe now, but next month I'll be doing it. And the last Ask Me Anything we did, we talked a little bit about the metrics that I look at, which is very similar. I mean, I look at customer lifetime value, Matt, but when I'm looking at things from a valuation perspective, one of the things that I look at is I say, okay, I can look at customer lifetime value, but that's really that's a metric that takes revenue into consideration. And so for me, because valuation is basically very cash flow centric, whether it's a lawn care business or a pest control business or a fire protection business, whatever sort of route-based service business out there, gross margin is the most important thing that I look at, because everything under the gross margin line in the cost structure of the business can be changed around once it's acquired. But like, for example, it's really hard to change the gross margin of a pest control business, because that is a function of your pricing and your route density, right? As well as your field efficiency and so on and so forth.
100%.
So I'm often looking at how much marketing and advertising dollars am I spending today to get X amount of incremental gross margin. And so instead of looking at the revenue line, I'm saying the gross margin line. And the reason why I do that is because not every revenue dollar is created equal once it flows through the P&L. I'm really concerned about gross margin, and why gross margin is important to me is it takes into direct consideration your pricing.
Yeah.
It also takes into direct consideration your field efficiency. And a week or two ago, we talked about increasing route density using digital marketing. So if I'm looking at like my total advertising and marketing spend over my incremental increase in gross margin, that really gives me an idea of not only the revenue that I'm actually buying with the sales and marketing, but it's also giving me an idea as to my pricing and my field efficiency. So I know I'm derailing this conversation on customer lifetime value, but it's just how I look at things.
Oh, it's important because here's what we're talking about together, and the people that are joining us, right? And please ask questions below. We would love to answer them. But this is why this is important. Companies like mine grow professionally, other companies, right? Companies like yours evaluate the revenue of those mature companies that are ready to sell and have all of these KPIs and metrics that are in place to help people say, am I ready? What do I need to do to be ready? What lever do I need to pull to get me closer to ready so that I can sell and head on off to Puerto Rico and hang out with the Mex and whatever, right? And so we're telling a story here, a growth story, and then a story at its conclusion. And just like you're saying, there's lots of things that you shift and change in between those two places, how you grow that top line, and then what you need to be doing on the bottom line to increase cash flow. There's lots of things that you can be doing, but you're 100% right. For pest control specifically, there are a very limited amount of levers that you can pull. Retention is one of them. Quality of service is another one. You know, at Killingsworth in particular, we were never shy about being the most expensive service out there. And it was not a problem. We had 34,000 customers by the time that we sold. And we were at the time, I don't think we are anymore, but we were the most expensive pest control company in the Charlotte Metro, fifth fastest growing city in the world, right? And we had no problem. So customer care, quality of service, that's a lever you can pull, right? Price of the contract value, that's a lever you can pull, right? We are comfortable offering you this price because we know the quality of our service and we know you're going to be happy and you're not going to want to go anywhere once you're in here with us, right? And route density, that's another one, right? And then you do the game of fractions internally, right? You're doing things like, Dad's favorite story. He was telling John Speed and Spencer Morgan recently. We're up at Dad's shop. And he was telling both of those boys about his B&G guns, right? He got the chemical costs of Killingsworth incredibly low because
he would fill them at the
manager.
I remember him taking me around the shop back in 2017 when we had a
manager would show up in the morning early. Look at the technician schedule. That's right.
There was a cage in there.
In a cage. Yeah. Mix all of the chemicals necessary for that technician for that day and load their vehicle. And the technician would come and grab their vehicle and leave. Nobody had more or less than what they needed. So there are things that you can do, especially if you are as inventive as Mike Rogers is, to find more margin and create more profit, which he definitely is not shy about letting people know. And people are often shocked when they see the profitability of his P&Ls from back in the day. But that's all connected.
On that point, Matt, just to tell a little tale, I remember back in 2017, it was the fall, we were touring acquirers around Killingsworth. Your father was giving everyone the tour. And I remember the demonstration was worth like 1,000 words because he randomly picked a technician literally out of a lineup, so to speak, and said, Hey, boy, why don't you go get on in there and fill up your stuff? Like he sent a guy in there just at random to, put chemicals in. And the guy was sloshing stuff around, wasn't measuring things right, all sorts of jazz.
Yeah.
And then like an hour later, he brought everyone back in, we kind of toured around and he's like, here's how the manager did it. And he actually he measured like what had come out of the different bins.
Yeah.
A dramatically different amount of chemical came out from the technician versus the manager. So everyone looked at that and like these were big, Rentokil was there and anticimex. These are all big companies that looked at this and said, we've literally never thought about this before.
How do we implement this on amazing. A larger, 100%.
Yes.
So many things you can do, but kind of take it back to the beginning, right? This lifetime value. There are definitely ways that digital marketing specifically can help you enrich lifetime value. The first thing, social proofing, right? Make sure you're telling your company's story through your reputation out there in the world. I'll give a shout out to, I believe most of the guys that we use Podium to get their reviews, and absolutely love it. So there are tools like that out there that are going to help you, get the word out about your business. Go for it, right? Tell as many of those stories as you can, because social proofing belongs in the psychology of the consumer. We want to know that the companies that we are about to do business with are trustworthy, are going to do a good job. And especially in an economy like this one, when money is tight, that I can spend this kind of money and expect a good return, right? That's the first one. Second thing is you need to be creating a culture internally, operation-wise, of excellent, amazing customer service. My favorite story that we told at Killingsworth was, it pains me to say so, but Kelly Poplin was I think he was a branch manager at a time, went to check in on a customer that he visited with recently. When he was in the neighborhood, he'd step by her house and ask her how she's doing. She's an elderly lady. She had a bunch of flowers on her front porch that were still in the little containers, like they had just come from Lowe's or something. And he asked her where she wanted him to put those, and he planted them for her while they sat there and talked, right? And she sent this handwritten letter into the office going on and on and on about how much that meant to her, that a company would take that kind of time, right? There has to be a culture, and it has to be from the top down. And you have to demonstrate it as the business leader, as middle management, and check in on it with your employees. But there has to be that like Chick-fil-A kind of culture, right? You need to be measuring that. That's where that net promoter score comes in handy. When you send out a petition to find out from your customers, how likely are you to talk about us to a future company? If the likelihood is high, you're doing a great job, right? If the likelihood is low, they're like, well, I don't know. We got a lot of questions and blah, blah, blah. Like south of 7, right? I think it's a scale of 1 to 10, south of 7, you got some work to do, right? So figuring out that social proofing, figuring out your net promoter score, right? Making sure that culture is in place of good customer care. And then finally, touch points. This is where digital marketing comes into place, as well as for social proofing. But you need to make sure that you are communicating with your clients pretty regularly, right? You need to stay at the front of their psyche when they are going through life, because your consumers' lives, your clients' lives are busy as mine, right? I got 3 kids. We got martial arts. pH level in the pool outside is low. Got to go fix that, right? Somebody cut the grass. Damn it, I got to weed eat, right? Who's making dinner, right? The consumer's life is just as complicated as yours in some respects. And so you need to have these regular touch points, whether it's through SMS or email, to communicate with this client so that they know that you're close by. And if they need you, that you're right there, right? Could just be a checking in on you, see how you're doing, how can we help you, blah, 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 right? But then finally, the biggest one is pushing out any type of like a loyalty program will get you from the 5-year retention period to the 7-year retention period. Hey, because you are a loyal customer and you've been with us for X, we would like to offer this to you at Y, right? Thank you so much. And just leave it out there. Leave it on the table. Some people will take it, some people won't. But what you'll see over time is you've gone from 5-year retention to 6-year retention to 7-year retention to possibly more, if the quality is good. And then you've stretched out all this, going back to that $120 that you made for that conversion. Or if you're like our boys and girl, shout out Jana and Jake Klaus at Natura, they said to their account manager last week that these are the lowest customer acquisition costs they've ever seen. Right now is at $110. Right. So our conversion costs in the 40s, right? And their closing ratio is fluctuates around 50%, right? So it costs them $110 to get that $3,850, right? That is money well spent. Mike Rogers would have said, I'll spend money like that all day long, right? And so those are the things you can do from a digital marketing perspective to make sure that you are staying connected with that customer and stretching out the amount of time that they're willing to stick it out with you. That was a lot.
I think about how your business and my business somewhat collide.
Relate.
Where there's some intersection. And so, for example, when I think about, when I have discussions with clients, let's use pest control, for example, they'll say to me like, hey, I spent $300,000 on, all sorts of advertising, whether it's billboards, digital marketing, so on and so forth. And I think a lot of times folks really don't understand the returns on those investments, nor do they understand really what they should pay to actually acquire a customer. So if we talk about CAC or customer acquisition cost, and CAC obviously ties directly into customer lifetime value in a lot of ways. Often one ratio you look at is CAC, customer acquisition cost, over lifetime value. And so when I look at a business, and when somebody calls me up and says, "Hey, Paul, got a $10 million pest control business. How much should I be willing to pay for a customer?" Right? Like, what should my customer acquisition cost be? And it really comes down to every business is unique. And where I always start with these guys is, well, not only is the market unique, but every company is, like, for example, if I've got a pest control business that on average retains residential customers for 6 years, and you've got one that on average retains residential customers for 3 years, per your original point when we just started this discussion today, I should be willing to pay a lot more for that customer because I can retain them for 6 years versus your 3 years. So
100%, without fear.
I typically tell everyone, okay, your starting point is get granular on what your current customer retention numbers look like.
Yeah.
You can always influence those going forward, but let's figure out
where are we?
Starting point. Where are we starting from? And a very simple way to do that is whether you use Pest Routes or PestPack, there's a million different software programs, but whatever you're using, go back, export customer data. If you can go back 10 years, that's awesome. But you could basically export every customer that was on the books on January 1st, and then see which of those customers actually exist on December 31st of that year. And that'll effectively give you your retention rate.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly right. You'll see your retention rate for the year. And we can imply things from 1 year retention rates. I like to look at cohorts. And I think I'm not going to bog this discussion down. I think customer retention is it's a separate discussion. And we will do that actually. Maybe in a future episode, you'll be asking me questions on customer retention and how we calculate that. And we'll go through that. But if you're able to figure out even your annual customer retention rates, you can basically invert that to determine what the duration of that customer is, right? Like, so if a retention rate is 80%, then you're roughly keeping customers, 20% defect per year. You got to, you roughly have a 5-year duration, or your lifetime duration of a customer is 5 years. And so we'll go through all of that, but that's a really, really good starting point. Because obviously if you've got the ability to retain that customer for a longer period of time, you should be willing to pay more. If you can't retain, then maybe instead of investing a ton of money up front in advertising and marketing, maybe you're best suited in saying, okay, how do I put into place a customer retention program and get my entire organization focused on retaining customers? In pest control, we like to see, somewhere between 5 and 8 years is probably right in the meaty part of the bell curve for customer retention. Commercial tends to retain longer. Historically, it has. It's changed quite a bit. That market's changed, and we can talk about that another time. But focus on your customer retention rates. The other thing is, like, if you can figure out what your customer lifetime value is, like, so one customer, whether it's, let's use round numbers. Let's say it's $1,000, right? And that's very low for a pest control company, but let's just say it's $1,000 because I want to use simple numbers. If your CLV is $1,000, and then you're able to look at your P&L and really understand what your EBITDA numbers are. So basically your operating cash flow number, and it should be 20%, 20 to 25%. It should be in that range. Let's assume 20%. Now, everyone's going to be different, and this is why it's important to look at your own business. But if your CLV is 1,000 and your operating margin is 20%, you should effectively be looking at this saying, well, that customer over that lifetime is kicking off, $200 to me. So how much should you effectively be willing to pay for that customer?
Exactly.
Yes. And so this is the sort of math that I think you and I will get into, but I think you raise an extremely important point, which is understanding that in a route-based recurring revenue business, you're not doing advertising and marketing for that one sale. you're doing advertising and marketing to acquire a customer and then retain that customer over a longer duration.
Yes. I think a great way to kind of summarize that, we can use Nutura as an example, right? If at $110, if that is their acquisition cost, right, for the customer acquisition cost for their new clients that they're bringing on, and they're keeping them on, I know these guys, their quality is exceptional, extraordinary. If you're watching this, you should pay attention to things that are going on with Eric. He's a rock star, right? Jake, Jana, brilliant. But they're keeping customers for a long time. So for that $110 for a new customer, they're getting $3,850. That's a 35 times return on investment of that $110, right? At the startup phase of businesses, as they're jumping into their metrics and figuring out what does our attrition look like? How can we think about this in terms of how long we're keeping people on and all that kind of stuff? Once you evaluate those things and you determine this is how much this is our threshold, right? Our number that we're going to work on trying to hit for customer acquisition costs. And we're just going to benchmark this over a 3-month period, right? 3 months is important. But as we benchmark this thing, then you need to be figuring out what kind of risks are you willing to take? What type of investment are you willing to take for a return like 35 times of what you put in to get that customer, and how big are you willing to go to grow your company? Because that will be one of the key determining factors, just like what we talked about at the beginning. It's a great, it's kind of a great bookend. That will be one of the key determining factors where you'll leave this elementary/middle school place and start to head into high school, because you understand that my mind isn't fixed right here on the day-to-day. I'm looking out a year. I'm looking out 2 years. And I want to hit these growth metrics over the course of the next year, because my customer acquisition cost is this, my retention is this, my lifetime value is this. And so I know if I can get this work in and make these kind of investments, my company should grow by X by the time that we get to year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, right? And you've changed the game entirely just with that mindset shift.
That's great. You've introduced a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and I want to explore this further. Anyone has any questions, leave them in the comments below, Matt. I love your questions and comments, and any further suggestions as we delve deeper into this. Now, Matt, I think for the next episode, we're kind of mid-season right now. Everyone's eyeing the end of the season, right? And
we're all looking towards Denver.
We have not talked about we haven't talked about where the numbers are shaking out with regard to particularly the pest control market, and I want to delve into that with you. So maybe on the next episode we can chat about that.
We will do that. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Have a wonderful time out in the mountains this week.
Heck yeah, can't wait. It's not going to be like sitting on a river in Florence, but it'll be quiet, and I'm looking for quiet.
It will not.